Hey Vision Chasers, it's Dr. Byrd here with a social studies lesson for you today. In 1968, on April 4th, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And in this lesson today, what we're going to do is we're going to explore why Dr. King was in Memphis. So by the end of this video, you will be able to answer the question, what local problem in Memphis was Dr. King brought in to help resolve. So with that being said, let's get started. In Memphis, the sanitation workers who collected the garbage actually endured very, very poor working conditions. And sadly, those poor working conditions were felt more so by the African Americans. African Americans had to deal with discrimination in addition to being paid less than white workers. Now, these workers are stuck in a tight spot because, yes, there's discrimination. They're also dealing with receiving less pay than their white counterparts. But they need the job, they need the money to support their way of life, to support their families. And so what they try to do is they did start a union. And the purpose of starting a union is so that all of these workers can band together and try to negotiate better working conditions, better pay, and definitely get rid of the discrimination in the workplace. So that was the purpose of starting the union. But unfortunately, the city decides that they are not going to acknowledge this union. They're not going to make this union legit. And so for months, the city is going to reject the union and the things that they're asking for. Now, another one of the poor conditions that they had to deal with was that as they were collecting garbage, there is nothing to shield them from the weather. Now, as you can see here in this picture on your screen, one of the things that the workers did to protect themselves from the rain was they actually rode in the back of the truck where the garbage goes. Another thing these workers did to protect themselves from the rain is when they went to go pick up trash, they would decide to just stand under the porch of a house that they were collecting the trash and wait for the rain to pass. Now, when the city found out about this, they made the rule that, African American workers, they were not allowed to stand under the porch of white citizens. And so that gives you an idea of just how bad things were. Now, things are going to go from bad to worse in February of 1968 when Ethel Cole and Robert Walker, are sitting in the back of a truck, again, just trying to shield themselves from the rain. Now, and you see it in today's garbage trucks, whenever a worker throws in trash, there is this, it's called a compactor, and what it does is it squeezes that trash together to reduce the size of the trash so that they can pick up more trash on their route. So these two workers are sitting in the back of the truck, protecting themselves from rain, when this compactor it malfunctions and it ends up crushing these two men to death. Now, what made these matters worse is the fact that the families, they weren't compensated as they should have been because these men, they died while working. And sadly, this was actually legal. The city did not have to compensate these families. And the city did not care. They did not show an appropriate amount of remorse for the fact that these two men lost their lives due to faulty equipment. So the strike is going to begin on February 12, 1968. African Americans decide that they are not going to collect garbage, and instead they're going to protest wearing these, they're called sandwich boards and so you can just imagine just how effective this was, because when the garbage workers are not collecting the garbage, just imagine the smell, imagine the scene, because garbage doesn't stop. But these workers decided that they are going to protest in order to receive better working conditions as a result of the loss of these two lives, and the city seemingly not caring about it. So the purpose of the strike is to get this union recognized. So many of the local black community leaders would support this strike. There would, in addition to the strike, there would be economic boycotts of downtown stores and newspapers and more marches around the city. Additionally, NAACP leaders were invited to come in and support. And on March 18th, Dr. Martin Luther King was invited to support the striking workers. Now, Dr. King saw this as a wonderful opportunity because at the time, he was starting to focus his attention on economic issues such as unemployment and poverty. Now, it didn't take Dr. King very long to get active with this movement here. He would lead a march in Memphis on March the 29th of that year, and sadly, this march was a disaster. And it is very interesting when you think of some of the things that are going on currently when we talk about violent versus nonviolent. Dr. King was very much a proponent of nonviolent protests. But that doesn't mean that you can necessarily control everyone who participates in what you're doing. And so this march is going to start out peacefully, but then something breaks down and ultimately it ends with broken windows, looting, and violence. Additionally, a 16-year-old young adult, Larry Payne, was killed by the Memphis police. And Dr. King was very, very sad and depressed and troubled by this violence. But he promised that he would return to Memphis. So he goes away for a while to deal with some other things. Because while this was going on, he was also planning to do something in Washington, D.C. regarding economic issues. So the media was not very kind to him. They called him a liar and smeared him. And again, what they did was they attached the actions of those who didn't believe in nonviolence. They attached that to Dr. King, and so they called him a liar. And they said, "You're not nonviolent. You are a violent person. You're just like Malcolm X." And so those are the things that they were saying about Dr. King as a result of this march that ended badly. So on April 3rd, Dr. King returns to Memphis as he promised. And it was on the night of April 3rd, Dr. King gave his famous mountaintop speech. And in this speech, Dr. King, with great energy and emotion, he paints a picture of the future, of a bright future where people are living in peace and harmony. And the crowd is with them, and there's a lot of energy in the room as he's giving this speech. And it's just such an emotional speech as you hear a bunch of call and response going on. And you can see once Dr. King finishes giving this speech, as he walks away from the microphone and back to his chair, he just collapses because basically, he just gave everything he had into this speech, into painting this picture for the crowd to see just how good things are going to be. And in the speech, he actually hints at the possibility of him not being there, of him being gone, of him being dead, and not being able to enjoy the picture that he painted for the crowd. And sadly, this would be his last speech, because just on the next day, April 4th, as Dr. King is preparing to go to a dinner, he leaves his hotel room and he's standing on the balcony when he is struck by an assassin's bullet, and this bullet would ultimately take his life. Now, the death of Dr. King would lead to riots across the country. Outside of the White House, President Johnson could see buildings on fire. But in Memphis, the work that Dr. King planned with the striking workers would continue. His wife, who is now a widow at this time, Coretta Scott King, would take part in this movement. On April 8th, she would lead a silent march of 42,000 people throughout Memphis to show support for the workers. Shortly after this, the city was encouraged to end this strike due to the death of Dr. King and just the fallout as a result. Just 1 week later, the mayor would end up recognizing this union. So here are some of the things that this union received. They received a 15% pay increase. They received a promise to end the discrimination. And there was also a grievance process installed so that the workers could respectfully submit their grievances and have them heard by management and addressed. And so now that the union is recognized, the workers vote to end the strike. So although their union was ultimately recognized and Dr. King gave his life towards this movement, I want you to know that there's a lot more to the story. There was a rocky road still between the union and the city, and I encourage you to dig deeper and look into some of those issues and things that took place even after they struck this agreement. Now I'm going to share with you some current information regarding the union. So check this out. This is dated July 10th of 2017, and it's titled "Memphis Looks to Help 1968 Strikers." Nearly 50 years after the Memphis Sanitation Strike, the city will offer the 14 living strikers $50,000 each in grants and will also contribute more to active sanitation workers' retirement. Mayor Jim Strickland announced on Thursday. So that's awesome. That's awesome. 14 people who were on strike at the time, they're going to receive some added money in addition to the current workers. Now, this is unfortunate. So this article was dated July 10th. This article right here is dated just 6 days later on the 16th, July 16th. Now, tell me what you think of this. The title is 1968 Issues Still Haunt Memphis Sanitation Workers Union. That's unfortunate. So here's a couple of highlights from this article. Not going to read the whole thing. It says, okay, so just to set it up so I can read to you very little, the title of the union that they created was the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Local 1733. That's the name of their union, okay? That's the name of the union that they started in 1968, and that union is still around today. So the president of that union, or no, excuse me, the chairman, the chapter chair of that union is Ronald Nelson, and he's got a quote in this article. Mr. Nelson does. He says, "We've got sanitation workers out here with torn fingers, half legs, cut arms, out here pulling garbage with canes, barely can get up on the truck, got to work to be able to pay bills," Nelson said. That doesn't sound too good, does it? Now, this is a quote, again, from this article from the president of the union, and his name is Michael Ford, and here is what he says. He says, "Now we know what all of this is coming from." Now, this he's referring to is the money that's going to the 14 surviving strikers from 68, in addition to added money for current workers' retirement. So he says, "Now we know what all of this is coming from," said Michael Ford, president of Local 1733. "We know the 50th is coming up," meaning 50th anniversary of the 1968 strike. "We know the 50th is coming up. We know it's a big deal for the city of Memphis. City of Memphis don't want no black eye on this." Wow. Well, I don't know. You know, this channel with these lessons, I'm all about giving you just the facts, and you decide what you want to do with it. You make up your own mind, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, it's going to be interesting when that time comes around for to recognize the 50th anniversary of the passing of Dr. King. And so the media is definitely going to be looking at the situation regarding these sanitation workers, and they're going to want to see that some things have changed. And So let's hope that things get a little bit better than what we just read in that article. So that's our lesson for the day. I thank you so much for watching. If you want to download the worksheet that goes along with this video, just go check out the Vision Chasers website in order to do so. Also, check that website for more tips and tools to help you chase your vision of success. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you. So until we meet again, please keep chasing your vision of success. Bye.